There are two worlds and two realities and two races of people. The line of division is real and is found at the place where credits become debits, or where we stop living by our own merit and become as children relying on the merit of others. In other words, the freeloader has insufficient merit and must survive on the grace earned by others. The person who is unable to pay his own way can benefit from the charity of others, who help him or her get back on their feet, or by free riding. The latter requires the state, and the state to operate requires public ownership to predominate. Despite what many would like us to think, this world is so simple. There are but two significant choices we can make. We can freeload or we can work. If our work does not cover costs, it is a scam. To determine if work covers costs, we must rely on barter-based exchanges. To facilitate barter, we utilize an equity-based currency. Equity-based currency quantifies value to permit assets with different values added to them to be exchanged. A ham worth 30 units can be traded for 30 units of value. Value attached to assets is called equity, and equity is issued in the form of preferred shares. When we use preferred shares as a form of money, the term can be contracted as prefers, as the currency designated by the symbol. Buyers use their equity accounts to buy what they need from sellers using prefers as a unit of account. Prefers are issued in multiples of 1 in the same way conventional forms of currency are, or / and electronic debiting can be used. Producing eggs increases equity. If workers consider starting a business selling eggs, the needed supplies and equipment are acquired by a debit to their equity accounts. Eggs are priced at 5 prefers a dozen. Bread is priced at 2 prefers a loaf. Ham is 6.00 a pound. Selling a dozen eggs provides the seller with 5.00. Prefers enable the seller of eggs to purchase a half pound of ham for 3.00 and a loaf of bread for 2.00. The seller does not profit from the sale of ham, or eggs, or other goods and services. That is, prices reflect value added. Sovereign markets utilize the labor theory of value for determining prices. There is no need for anyone to accumulate capital or to depreciate assets. The replacement of hens or ovens is not dependent on the egg business's ability to save money or borrow. There is no risk to selling eggs because one's capital is not going to be consumed and disappear in the process of conducting business operations. In a sovereign business, profits are as unnecessary, so is insurance. Insurance and profits represent risk, and in sovereign markets risk is liquidated. When hens or other assets are needed, the business obtains them by a transfer. Another can be bought or acquired that does not exist and which was not produced elsewhere. If the business needs to produce more eggs, then the egg-producing facility needs to acquire more hens from a facility specializing in this. If the business needs more eggs, then the demand for eggs has to have increased. The private market is a single all-inclusive market that transfers assets to where the demand is highest from places where demand is declining. Hens are transferred from the farm that raises pullets to the egg producer. Purchases of assets are just a transfer of assets. The equity represented by the asset is transferred from the buyer's account to the seller's account. Hens go one way and prefers go the other. Hens represent work. Eggs represent work also. When an asset is transferred, the equity the asset represents is added to the debit side of the buyer's account and added to the credit side of the seller's account. This keeps accounts in balance. People brought up in a climate of risk have difficulty understanding how a business could be set up, operated and expanded without the business needing to borrow or save or make a profit. Yet as members of a family or community, people do this all the time. When you help a friend move, you have created a moving company with your friend as the client. You do not receive immediate payment, nor do you make a profit. However, at some point you will cash in the equity you earned. Your friend will help you in some significant way, or he will help a friend or yours who you owe a favor to. If one friend does not repay your kindness, another one does. We all understand what it means to call in a favor. We all know people who help another and reminds that person that they owe them one. The economy of your network prospers because of the contributions that you all make to it. However, no money changes hands. This is an informal network. Jews do well because of the powerful social network they live in, not because they epitomize Scrooge. Social networks are informal economies and in fact are nominally private. They are informal because the accounting is subjective. They are private because they provide no taxable income. Each person has an invisible account that is debited and credited as help is given and received. However, the accounting is mental and lacks objectivity and relies heavily on the integrity of the participants. When a business starts up, the community benefits even though the business is privately owned, in the language of this system. Even in this system, the equity of a town increases when a new business is started. It is not that Babylon prevents all equity formation. To deprive us of what we created requires a way to let us build something that can then be expropriated. Apologetic is a way to reduce the socialization of our systems and increase privatization. The church is able to do what socialists have always done, but a better and more efficient way. When a buyer buys eggs, the market benefits because the equity in the market is a measure of the economic activity taking place between all buyers and sellers. The equity created by economic activity increases the equity of the buyers and sellers. Everyone benefits when eggs are sold and when bread is baked and sold and when ham is produced and sold, because a market is the economy of a community of buyers and sellers. As the economy grows, the equity of the community grows. The aim of any community is to increase its equity. It makes sense for the market to provide feed and chicks to those who raise hens and ovens to those who bake bread. This helps the buyer and seller and by extension, the entire community. The credits and debits only need to tend towards zero and no sector ought to remain indebted to another. Markets provide goods and services as debits to buyers' accounts and prefers as credits to the seller's account. The egg producer gets chickens from a supplier. The supplier is credited the value of the chickens and the egg producer is debited the same value. The supplier uses the credits earned to get the supplies she needs. What it is important to notice is that privatizing the market makes it impossible to externalize costs. Costs are payable by the same person who created them and guaranteed by the market itself. Sovereign communities find it beneficial to help citizens because the community is its equity. Without value added to assets, people become just another species roaming the forest. It is one thing to start a business, it is another thing to privatize a business or the assets that are needed to add equity to assets. To start an egg production business the conventional way, investors must buy chicks, feed and equipment and acquire the facility in which the production will take place. There are papers to sign and taxes to pay along with legal fees and regulatory standards to meet and the other upfront costs of going into business. The costs of starting a business increase risk for investors, because these costs may not be recouped. The business may be lost before it has time to operate. The less likely the startup cost can be liquidated, the higher the interest levied on any money borrowed. Interest rate increases are a primary cause of business failure. So, just having to pay interest on borrowed money increases the risk of failure. Investors may miscalculate the cost of setting up production. The owner may not have understood all of the legal requirements that comes with selling eggs, or he or she may have miscalculated potential profits and get to a point where the business cannot afford to replace worn-out equipment. The focus of the market is about the allocation of resources. The assumption that private enterprise makes is that those who risk their own money will make better economic decisions than people risking the money of others, in this case, the money of taxpayers. But what does it mean to have private risk, and how do private operators get rid of the state without exposing themselves to greater risk? The first thing we have to realize is that state is a criminal enterprise in every sense but the legal one. Meaning the difference between a gang and a government is the legal machinery used. The gang is still hands-on and relatively weak. The state has more formal ways of implementing the law and a less direct way of enforcing it. Any attempt to lay claim to what an individual created is an attempt to socialize costs. If the child was able to force everyone to give to it anything it wanted, it would be the de facto state. This is a hint at the power of the white race, which is a condition that earns you no points. As a white person, we judge people on character. As a white person, you have to earn respect and accomplish something. But there are costs to this. We cannot claim what does not belong to us, meaning we did not create it. To privatize a market, we have to eliminate all claims against equity, meaning the value added by individuals to assets. Assets are public, but the value is private. Free markets deal in public goods, but a private market handles private goods, meaning private markets exchange equity that has been added to assets by an individual. If we deal only with individuals and only with the value they created, we will have a private market. But this facility requires equity be represented by an equity vehicle or a monetary system based on equity. To privatize the market has to utilize an equity-based currency. However, this is based on the production of equity by private markets. We cannot have one without the other. How to privatize the monetary systems of the West will explain how to make money using the private market.